I do think that there is an opportunity to try to figure out, hey, if you could do payments but not have that underlying monetary pulse that eats away, it could be interesting. But my opinion doesn't matter. Neither does anyone else. It's like the market is going to ultimately decide. And so the beauty of the crypto industry is that it is very meritocratic, right? People can go and they can just build things, put them out into the world, and the market decides what gets value, what doesn't. And so let's see what happens.
Martin D'Souza here with the Nimiq Ecosystem Development Team, joined by my colleague Max Berger with the Nimiq Ecosystem Development Team, also the project manager for the CryptoCity initiative, and of course, our guest, Anthony Pompliano. Welcome to the podcast, Pomp.
Thanks so much for having me.
Pomp, founder and CEO of Professional Capital Management, is an American entrepreneur, investor, and host of the Pomp podcast. He posts interviews and content with a focus on technology, finance, and economics, and is single-handedly responsible for onboarding many of the people who own Bitcoin these days, including myself. Pomp, I'm a member of cohort number 6 of the Pomp's Crypto Academy, so we go way back. Really appreciate all you've done for the industry.
Absolutely. Well, the thing about Bitcoin and kind of the crypto industry is that everyone wants to always say thanks to somebody else. But what they don't realize is you went and you found the information, you went and you acted. You're the one who goes and gets a job. You're the one who buys, whatever asset. You're the one who holds the asset. And so at the end of the day, people are either successful or not based on their actions. And so it's nice to hear, thank you from time to time, but really it's just, people should be thanking themselves.
Yeah, we appreciate it. That's a good reframe, and you're totally right. So over the course of this conversation, we have a couple prepared questions for you that we're excited to get your insight on. But we also want to make sure that we touch on this. You recently released a book, How to Live an Extraordinary Life. As far as I understand it, it's a recommendation or letters to your daughter, but for the future generation on how they can live an extraordinary life. So we have a couple questions at the end we'd like to touch on and bring that to light.
Let's do it.
But without further ado, I think Max has got the first question.
Yeah, absolutely. Pomp, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Max. I'm working in the Ecosystem Development Department of 7-year deep down the rabbit hole crypto project called Nimiq. We're a layer 1 decentralized open source non-profit crypto project, basically trying to do good to the space. We've been from day one building original technology to contribute to the original vision of crypto, of building peer-to-peer electronic cash that is usable by everyone, people who have knowledge and who don't have knowledge. And basically, very important, we're not trying to be the better Bitcoin, we're not trying to replace Bitcoin, we're just basically just giving it a shot with our own approach of how to really nail crypto adoption for broader audience, so to say. So, for example, back in 2017, we were the first ones to introduce the browser node that allowed everyone to basically become a peer of a blockchain network from just a mobile device. And in that spirit, we've continued, to build original technology, trying to bring, this vision of crypto to life. So, right now, when we look outside the window, we see AI coins, we see meme coins, we see all of those sectors in the crypto space, getting a lot of attention and also creating some form of adoption, definitely. But, sometimes it's a little frustrating for us who are trying to contribute to the original vision and contribute technology. So my question is, do you think for you, is the original vision of self-custodial peer-to-peer electronic cash still alive? Or did it somehow get lost in the crypto hype?
It's a great question. I think that it's definitely still alive. And, one of the things I remind people is I know people who have electronic cash and I know people who have physical cash in their pocket. And they may not put 100% of their cash or their kind of net worth in their pocket, but plenty of people still walk around with physical cash. I do, right? And so I have money that is in these different form factors. On top of that, I have economic value. Sometimes it is in things like the stock market. Other times it is things like real estate. And so every asset has a different way that you interact with it and whether you have custody of it or you don't. And so I think that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are very similar, is that some people are going to buy the ETF. They only care about price exposure. They do not care about self-custody whatsoever. And that is what they're looking for. It may be because they can't actually do self-custody. Maybe they're a big institution or something like that. There's going to be a lot of people who want to buy it and say, I don't want to own the ETF. I want to own Bitcoin. But you know what? I don't really feel comfortable yet taking self-custody. And so they kind of sit in the middle. And then obviously there's a very large and growing number of people who say, you know what? I've been down the rabbit hole. I want to buy Bitcoin. I want to own the actual Bitcoin, not an ETF, and I want to take self-custody of it. And so I think the challenge to the Bitcoin community is how do we educate more people? How do we get more people to kind of move down that funnel to take self-custody of at least some of their Bitcoin? It doesn't even have to be 100%. It could just be some of it. And so it's really not, hey, it's not dead. Actually, if anything, it's growing the number of people who take self-custody. And I think people get caught up on the percentage, which is much less important to me than the aggregate number of people who are doing self-custody.
Yeah, thanks. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so true. We talk about that all the time in onboarding and related to education. It's like the worst thing that can happen in an onboarding experience is that a person comes in, gets rugged, gets scammed, loses money, et cetera, et cetera. So we're always trying to make that first experience positive so that they become a promoter and not a detractor. You know, a happy person will tell 2 people, but an unhappy person will tell 10. So it's just all about that education piece as always.
Yeah, and I think it's also safe to say that, true self-custody is still for people who are new to the space. I mean, it can be frustrating, it can be intimidating, and it is still complicated. So solving that is definitely a good goal, trying to solve that.
For sure. So at Nimiq, we are Bitcoiners at heart. You know, we love Bitcoin. We recognize its paramount importance as a store of value. You know, Nimiq is built to complete Bitcoin, not to compete with Bitcoin. So I think that's really important for people to understand. You know, despite Bitcoin's dominance, we haven't seen a scalable, decentralized, self-custodial, low barrier to entry L1 payment coin, especially one that's resistant to App Store censorship. Even Elon Musk has been quoted in saying that there's space for an L1 coin specifically focused on payments. Do you believe there's still room for such a pure L1 payment coin to gain prominence? And if so, what elements would have to be true to be essential for its success?
Yeah, one of the things that maybe I've changed my mind on or evolved my mindset on is Bitcoin. I used to think was going to be this great store of value. It was going to be the medium of exchange, hyper-Bitcoinization, et cetera. Maybe that happens 10, 20, 50 years from now. Right now, what is pretty clear is that Bitcoin is becoming what I call the digital savings account. People are buying Bitcoin and they're holding it. They don't want to spend it. It's dumb to spend your Bitcoin. You either get taxed if you live in the US or you're giving up future appreciation of the asset. And so really from my standpoint, Bitcoin has now become that digital savings account. What I think is actually more competitive when it comes to payments is stablecoins. Now, stablecoins are unique because they're not really an L1 coin, but they kind of are, right? They're kind of like this native thing that kind of isn't really an L1, but operates on an L1, et cetera. And so from that standpoint, I think that is where anyone who wants to build kind of an L1 decentralized tokens for payments or for a medium of exchange, that's what you've got to compete with. Now, the good news is that stablecoins are just fiat currencies with kind of lipstick on the pig, right? They're still going to be devalued. They're still going to end up doing what fiat currencies do. And so I do think that there is an opportunity to try to figure out, hey, if you could do payments but not have that underlying monetary policy that eats away, it could be interesting. But my opinion doesn't matter. Neither does anyone else. It's like the market is going to ultimately decide. And so the beauty of the crypto industry is that it is very meritocratic, right? People can go and they can just build things, put them out into the world, and the market decides what gets value, what doesn't. And so let's see what happens.
Yeah, that's well said. We talk about that a lot. So we're obviously an adoption-focused project. And so we're out talking to small business owners all the time, trying to get them to accept crypto. And in the early days, this is a very uphill battle because we're trying to get them to accept NIM. And obviously NIM is a very volatile asset. And so a restaurant owner or a grocery store owner says, look, guys, I'm an idealist myself. I'm super excited about crypto, but I just can't hold a volatile asset on my balance sheet. I operate with razor-thin margins. Like that's just not feasible for me and it's not the reality. So we actually integrated USDC into our wallet for that purpose so that, we do have a stable asset that people who accept crypto can hold. And then the second thing on that is I don't think we really understand the power of branding. And no disrespect to the international markets, but one of the strongest brands in the world in general is the US dollar. And so I think it's really important for people who are new to crypto that don't know anything about it to see USDC or USDT and recognize the branding associated with that. So I agree with you that stablecoins are going to be probably the major driver as we look to onboard the next 1 million wallets.
Yeah, I never thought of the dollar as a brand. I thought of Bitcoin as a brand. I thought of America as a brand, but the dollar is a pretty damn good brand too. So that's a great insight.
So true. Max, did you have a follow-up you wanted to ask on the stablecoin front?
I thought I've seen you talk about the checkings and savings analogy on CNBC last week, I think. Thought that was pretty interesting because it is actually what we're doing with or aiming at doing with our migration to proof of stake. It's basically people want to keep their asset and want to keep it. They don't want to spend it. They don't want to ask the question, am I now selling it at the top? Is it the right time? Yeah, so basically our approach is let people keep the asset and then have staking rewards that they can either swap into, like you can basically swap them back into Bitcoin, you can swap them back into stables, or what we're doing with CryptoCity. CryptoCity is basically built as a crypto adoption visibility machine. That is what Martin says. It's a lot of things is about branding. If you're looking out in the real world and you're looking for normal people to look into this tribalist jungle of crypto projects, like where do I want to go? With what kind of project or community do I want to be? Like we're going down the route. We want to give crypto adoption a more easy to understand face, that is basically capable of getting into the mainstream and to experiencing adoption beyond the tribalism in the crypto space. And what we're doing is basically we're trying to bring crypto adoption to the places where people live, so to urban spaces, to cities basically, and trying to bring crypto into everyday lives. So I don't know how often you actually talk to business people, maybe restaurants, maybe bars, you're out and about, and trying to convince them that at least it is interesting to take a look at the crypto space. Do you do that on a regular basis? And what is your most successful punchline, so to say, in order to convince somebody at least to show initial interest in learning about crypto?
I used to do it a lot. I do it much less now. Maybe it's because people just ask if they want to discuss it. But look, the thing that seems to be most effective in my experience of trying to convince someone to just pay more attention is I don't talk about Bitcoin or crypto or any of the things that the industry talks about. All I talk about is the problem. And if you think of, let's say, Bitcoin as an example, talking about currency debasement, the national debt, the lack of spending control, kind of all of these issues gets people's attention. And they tend to already be familiar with them. Like, yes, that is a problem. And then I ask them, what are you doing about it in your investment portfolio? And they usually don't have a good answer, right? And then that opens up the door. Well, did you know? Or here's what I'm doing, right? And I usually present it to them as, by the way, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I can just tell you what I'm doing, how I think about it. Like, what do you think? How do you think about it? What are you doing? Right. And I want to learn. And so I think a lot of people, when they go out, specifically in the kind of Bitcoin and crypto world, it's like they're like moralizing. They want to talk down to people and say like, oh, we're smart, you're not. Like, what are you doing? I usually approach it the other way. It's like, maybe they know something I don't know. And so by presenting, here's what I'm doing, understanding what they're doing, and then asking questions, that tends to lead to, one, a much better conversation. Two, I usually end up learning something. And three, they're more receptive because they realize, hey, this person's not trying to stuff some idea into my head. They're much more interested in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a very good take. I actually do have one more follow-up question to the topic of stablecoins. Like stablecoins, of course, that's also self-custodial digital cash basically, but there is a fundamental difference because most stablecoins, if not all, they do have centralized issuers. Do you think for idealistic people as we are, is that an important difference? Is that not interacting with basically true cryptocurrencies? Does that make a difference for you in terms, like in comparison to volatile, fully decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin?
I think it goes back to different people are going to want different things. Like, to me, that's one of the beauties. Again, just, use Bitcoin maybe is kind of the largest asset. Some people buy it for the store of value. Some people buy it for the lack of censorship. Some people buy it because it can't be seized. Some people buy it because they're speculating. All of those use cases are completely fine, right? And it's like different things to different people. And to me, that is true beauty of an asset, is that it's not just used one way. And I think that's actually what makes it global appeal. So to your point, people are going to use things in different ways. And they may be on chain, they may be off chain, they may hold it, they may do custody and self custody, like all these different things. We actually want as many options as possible because to me, options equal the biggest tent. And if you have the biggest tent, you get the most adoption, right? And kind of the highest likelihood of success.
Yeah, that's well said. So I think it's fair to say, Pomp, that you're like us. You're an idealist. You know, as an early adopter or evangelist of Bitcoin, you recognized how its core values of decentralization, censorship resistance, self-custody aligned with your own values. And I think most of the crypto industry shares this idealism. And at Nimiq, as a nonprofit with an environmental focus, we certainly share those values as well. Perhaps we're even naively idealistic, which can work to our downfall sometimes when we're out there, you know, trying to drive mainstream adoption. So in the spirit of your book, How to Live an Extraordinary Life, what advice would you give to young innovators who are driven by idealism, but face the harsh realities of pragmaticism? You know, how can they stay true to their values while navigating the challenges of building idealism-focused innovations?
The single most important lesson from that entire book, which is the common thread through everything, is that you have agency. Everything in the world is telling you that you're a victim, the world act upon you. Just sit back and enjoy whatever we have in store for you. But every successful person I know, 100% of them, at some point in their life realized that they had agency and they began to take action. And so the kind of irony of writing a book called How to Live an Extraordinary Life is that your extraordinary life is unique to you. What you want to get out of life may not be what I want to get out of life. And so really the challenge is understanding what is the extraordinary life that I want to live? How do I go and I get that? And then the most important step being, and now I must act. And so if people can learn that they have agency, it's a great way to balance, how do I view the world? What are my values? What are my ethics, right? What are the things that I believe in? And then what are the things that I'm going to do from an action standpoint? And it is usually the action that sets people apart from their peers.
Yeah, that's well said. I think you kind of jumped ahead. We were going to ask you kind of the through line of the book, but it's so well said, is that we all have agency. One of the things that I'm always I used to be a volunteer instructor at Synthesis.is, which is Elon's company that he built on SpaceX to educate his kids. And that's the main thing that these SpaceX engineers and some of the leading tech company engineers are trying to teach their kids at an early age is the concept of agency. And so I love that you brought that up. I think next question, let's hand over to Max.
As Martin said, that would have been our next question. Like, what is the most important takeaway that you would like to share with the world from your book? Like, if there's one thing that you could put on a billboard, short and concise, you know, you have the space and there's one thing you can let the world know. Besides the idealistic question of people, is it that one, or is it something beyond that? Like the essence of you, or what you want to bring across?
I think there's probably a couple of things. I don't know if I could just pick one, but one that I think would be awesome is smile. You're going to die anyways, right? Like, just like chill out. You're going to die. It's okay. That is the end game. A lot of the things you're worried about probably don't matter nearly as much as you think they do. So that's a big one. Second is this idea that fear is a silent killer. So many people self-censor themselves or scare themselves into not taking action. And so I think that that's a really, really big component, is making sure that you can put yourself in a position, again, to act, but you usually got to overcome fear in order to be able to do that.
And it's so funny how debilitating fear can be. Not to sound too philosophical here, but you know, our survival instincts protect us from not only physical pain, but emotional pain as well. And very often it manifests as fear, which prevents us from doing things. That's, you know, how we develop these limiting beliefs and things of that nature. And limiting beliefs is definitely something that came through when I was reading your book. You know, you just have to trust yourself and you have to act in the face of fear. Know that everybody else is scared as well. All the successful people that you look up to, you know, they didn't overcome fear. They just took it with them. And I imagine that's something that you could speak to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's they use it as motivation a lot of times. They're scared of not being successful. They're scared of what other people are going to say. They're scared of name your thing. And so it can either eat you alive or you can use it as fuel. And I think successful people use it as fuel.
Absolutely. Well said. All right, last question here. And, you know, we kind of touched on it, but again, just in case you just started listening, How to Live an Extraordinary Life, available on Amazon, available everywhere that you buy books. It's a great read. You know, it's something that I really enjoyed the past couple of days since I got my copy. We purchased a couple more copies to give away to some of our community at some CryptoCity events as well. So really excited to have that gift to share with them. If I'm recommending the book to someone who does not know you, so not a crypto industry person, someone who has no idea who Pomp is, how do I pitch it? How would you consider explaining the book or conveying it to someone that it's a good read?
I think it's just a guy who somehow figured out how to be happy and made a lot of mistakes along the way, wrote 65 letters to his kids on all the life lessons that he collected over the years. And it covers everything from money and investing to work, relationships, health, happiness, and kind of everything in between. And there's some people who I think are looking for a path. They're trying to figure out, how can I improve my life? How can I put myself in a better position? And I found in my life, reading books by people who are willing to put that advice down has been very valuable to me. And so this is my small contribution to the world of the things that I've picked up over 36 years.
Awesome. Yeah, a guy who figured out how to be happy. Very humbly said, but very, very succinct. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Pomp, thanks so much for joining the podcast. Super excited to have this opportunity to chat with you, to discuss how to live an extraordinary life, but also for our benefit to help with some insights on how we can continue to build, how we can continue to drive crypto adoption in the world with Nimiq, and how we can help drive crypto adoption in cities and urban areas where people use and transact crypto. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you very much for being with us.